Morning, everyone, and welcome to this today's chat, which is part of the Emerging Future series. I'm Vimal Mahendru, and with me, my special guest today is a dear friend also, Arti Chaudhry. Um, I'm delighted to introduce Arti as she's been an eminent consultant for over 30 years in the area of leadership development, organization culture, culture building, assessments, HR processes, and this list goes on to diversity and inclusion. In fact, Arti is actually one of the leading authorities in the country on diversity, and her passion is mentoring leaders so that they may be able to leverage diversity in their organizations. Additionally, she is also on the internal committee for prevention and redressal of sexual harassment for a multitude of organizations. Arti is also presently a trustee on Rashtriya Vrijanand Andhra Vidyalaya Society. It's an NGO that runs residential schools and career centers for visually impaired girls who come especially from underprivileged backgrounds. So Arti, really welcome today. Thank you very much for doing this with us.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure, Vimal.
Thank you. Before we commence, may I just give some of the housekeeping rules? Of course, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available, and the link will be shared with all the attendees for later viewing. Please post your questions, and feel free to have as many questions as you like, and put the questions in the Q&A box. And if you have comments, observations, etc., please put them in the chat box so that we will review both, and I will try and weave your questions also into the discussion today. And also, if you have any specific observations, comments, or even counterpoints, please share those. So coming back to you, Arti, first of all, welcome again to this session with us. How's work from home for you? You've been home for last 4 months almost.
Yes. Well, I have a confession. I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it because prior to this, I had very crazy schedules. I used to travel almost 2-3 times a week, and crazy as in I would wake up at 3 in the morning, catch a flight, and take a flight back and reach home again at 2 in the morning. So all of that is over. I am home for the last 4 months. But it also has the flip side of it that A, of course, work has come down, so which is good and bad. B, everything is happening virtually, which has its own challenges. I am more of the kind of person who would like to sit and converse over a cup of tea, but I'm having to do this virtually now. So I'm getting used to it, yes.
Wonderful one. So tell me, you've been an eminent consultant for 30 years, doing a lot of work in HR. What took you on this journey toward inclusiveness, diversity, gender matters?
Well, the short answer is that it happened by chance. Okay, and actually, it was not something which I planned or worked towards. But actually, that would also not be covering what really happened. So yes, it happened by chance. But I think these chances also occur when you are gravitating towards a certain zone. So I come from a family which is, we're two sisters. There was never any kind of, discrimination, or we never felt anything different because we were girls. We had the same opportunities that anybody else would have. So for me, it was a non-issue. So when I started working also, it was a non-issue. And I was very, very lucky. I spent a very large part of my employee life with a company called Aisha, which was fabulous, which gave me all the opportunities I could ever look for. And I never, ever felt discriminated against. So, the kind of opportunities, and being a woman handling training and part of IR and legal department for a plant in Aisha where there were only 3 women and the rest was all male, and a very turbulent IR scenario. So that all of those things gave me a lot of confidence. And when I started working on my own 20 years ago, uh, organizations were still not talking diversity. I think this whole diversity inclusion, at least in India, is less than 10 years old. But early 2000s, murmurs in the multinationals had started. So I was very lucky. Some of my clients asked me to work in it. So it was actually demand pull. So clients requested me to do some work around diversity. I said, yes, of course, why not? And so it grew. And because I was working in diversity, when the law came out, my clients asked me to do some work around prevention of sexual harassment. And now that's almost 60-70% of the work I do. So it's really my clients and the employers.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, and that this is exactly how I've also felt that earlier when I was just cutting my teeth into work and professional life, never heard of this, but especially in the last 10 years, it's become a big corporate agenda to look at diversity. What has really changed? What is leading to this? And maybe you can give some examples of discrimination, bias, harassment, and why these matters are beginning to make such an impact today.
Yeah, so I would say, the green shoot started way back in the early 2000s when the American multinationals really started talking about diversity. At that point of time, though in the multinationals, diversity had a larger definition, including ethnicity, people with disabilities, etc. But in India, it was largely gender diversity, and that too binary gender diversity. And the number of women and the organized sector was very, very low. So the first agenda was to increase the number of women. So when that started happening, and more women came into the workforce, not only at the entry level and at the factory shop floor jobs, which some industries already had. So industries like food processing, textile, and handicrafts, they already had a very large percentage of women, but all at the shop floor level, and nobody in the supervisory or managerial level. So when more women started coming into the white-collared workforce, into managerial positions, supervisory positions, that gave rise to that it's not just enough to have more women. There's a lot more we need to do. So, that's when other issues started surfacing. And I think one other thing was that a whole generation of working women also emerged. So my grandmother was working, my mother was working, but they were in the classical jobs that women do, teaching, right? So my generation, I think some more women started coming into non-teaching, non-nursing jobs. So they were in the corporate sector. And then the next generation, we had a whole new wave of women who are educated, who are skilled, who are looking for jobs, and here are parents who are willing for them to work. And they're providing those support systems. So when there were more of these, of course, there was more ask for environments which were more inclusive. So I think it was a combination of being at the right place and the right time.
So you just mentioned, the word binary. I couldn't catch the context of that. What is that?
So till recently, we thought there were only 2 genders. There was male, there was female. Now even the government of India has recognized that there aren't just 2 genders. And so we're kind of, at least rationally, in our heads, coming to terms with that people may not be defined as male or female. And it's not just the biological aspect of it, it's the gender identity. Having said that, I think it's still something that most of us refrain from acknowledging or talking. And there's still some awkwardness around it. So, in organizations, we might have changed our employment forms to say male, female, other. But when it comes to our close family and friends, we are still fairly binary on that. But things are changing. The good news is there is needle movement. There is needle movement, perceptible needle movement. And especially the youth today is quite accepting of the fact that people are not just male and female. They could be anything in between or outside of it.
That's really interesting, the way you put it. Sometimes I worry that is the focus also coming because the issues are more, we keep on seeing in the news, for example, issues of gender harassment coming up. Do you also see that the cases are going up, or is it that that is not happening, but it is just that the news is catching up?
Um, See, it's a difficult question to respond to because we don't have data around what is not getting reported, right? So it's a chicken and egg story. Is it that the number of cases have gone up, so there is more reporting, or because there is more reporting, more people are coming forward and raising it and thus sharing what's going on? So my take on it is it's both. Perhaps the number of incidents of harassment related to gender or sexuality have gone up because the interaction between genders has also increased. There's more opportunities. The world is a very different place from what it was 30, 40 years ago. So situations or contexts where harassment can happen are very different today. Also, what is happening is because of the kind of environment we have, people are feeling more confident and safer to report it. So more people are coming forward, yet, and just allow me 1 second around that, yet less than 20% instances of sexual harassment of women get reported. Because that we have data around. Sexual harassment of other genders, we don't even track. But just sexual harassment of women, less than 20% instances get reported.
That's quite stark, and it doesn't speak well for our society that one, this happens, and second, we don't even record it or report it.
There are lots of factors that lead to people not reporting it. So, for example, there was this lady that I was talking to who had reported an incident where one of her colleagues misbehaved with her, touched her inappropriately while they were traveling in a car, going for a client meeting. And she reported it, and we were investigating it. And she said, look, it's not just me. He's done it to the other girls in the office as well. So we said, give us the names. Let's speak to them. So we started speaking to the other girls, and one of the girls came forward and she narrated an entire incident. And we said, can you give this to us in writing? Because, in order for it to be seen as evidence, we need a witness statement. She said, no. She said, ma'am, outside this room, I'm going to deny this ever happened. So we were like, why? We're already investigating a complaint against this person. If it has happened to you, it will enable us to, take appropriate action. She said, ma'am, if word gets out that this happened to me, the first thing that is going to happen is my in-laws are going to say, no need to go to work, leave. You don't need to work in an organization like this. And I have got married just a few months ago. I have an 8 lakh rupee student loan. I'm already looking for a job. So the moment I find a job, I will leave because I don't want to work with a person like this. But I can't leave without another job in hand because if I do, my loan EMI will have to be borne by my father. I can't let that happen. So
that's part of the reality.
That's part of the reality. There's a lot of times when, especially for women, when they are sexually harassed, they don't even tell their families about it because the family will say, you must have done something, right? You must have encouraged this person. Why is it happening to you? So there are multiple reasons. You get labeled. People, the stigma around it. Oh, she's the person who raised a complaint. If a man chooses to raise a complaint, he's ridiculed. Imagine, a man goes to a friend and says, this girl is hitting on me, sending me texts, asking me out. Typically, the friends will say, wow, yeah, lucky you. In today's context, people find it difficult to say that, why are you finding it unwelcome? Why do you think it's harassment?
Exactly. I was going to ask this question. Typically, in a patriarchal society like India, it's very normal for the elders in the business context to call the younger ones beta, and being more patronizing and touching, and maybe once in a while also giving a compliment, bade sundar lag rahe ho, and looking very nice. How do you draw the fine line between what is uh, good and innocent? And because, I mean, that line seems to be very blurred.
Very, very blurred. Yeah, in fact, interestingly, um, this is an evolving scenario. So when I also started working in the early 90s, nobody spoke about this. And so there were people who would pay you compliments, and as a young professional who had just joined the workforce, I would giggle and I would blush and I would say thank you. Times have changed. Fact is, times have changed. We all need to become aware of how times have changed. So, for example, what was earlier seen as patronizing, today is seen as discrimination. What was earlier seen as being very considerate, oh, she is female, let's not give her this role because this role requires travel, or this role requires working late, or this role requires interacting with certain kind of people, or going into areas which are not very safe. 30 years back, that may have been seen as, oh, how concerned the employer is. Today, it might be seen as discrimination, saying, how are you deciding that whether I'm ready for this role or not? That choice is mine. I'm a professional. Here I am to do my job. I'll take that decision whether, if the role entails this, I'm wanting to do this or not. So the times have changed. It's a tough one because we've been used to a certain way of life. We've been used to a certain kind of interaction, and we need to be conscious and take steps to ensure that our behaviors align to the new reality. Just like even the young people, it's not just about old and young, it's even for the young people, there is a certain way they behave in college, but when they come into the workplace, they need to realign the way they work. Kind of language that was okay in college is not okay in the workplace. The way they dressed when they were in college is not okay in some workplaces. So we need to realign to the changed reality. But yes, this beta, darling, sweetie, now not acceptable.
Okay,
I have known such situations, yeah.
okay, so you're talking about what is not acceptable from the employer or the elders, so-called elders, or the senior folks in business. What if, I mean, on the call today, we have a lot of young professionals and youngsters who are just about to join the work life. What message do you give them as to how do you differentiate from their perspective between what is done, what is not done? If tomorrow somebody, I could go to office and say, hey, you're looking very nice today. What will, agreed that I should not be saying such things, but if I blurt out like this, what should be the reaction from the other side to say, hey, listen, boss, that's not done. Don't give me a compliment.
Okay, so let me just say this. It's okay. We can be ourselves. We can have friends at work. We can have rapport. We can have banter. We can pay each other compliments. The issue is not that. The issue is when it is unwelcome to the other person. When it is, when I think we have that rapport, but you don't think we have the rapport, right? So okay. I think it's okay to say, hey, Vimal, wow, you're looking hot today. And you're like, excuse me, right? So because in your head, we don't have that kind of relationship. So the one thing I would say to everybody is that it is human to assess ourselves from intention. But it's time to start training ourselves to assess our actions from the point of view of impact. How is it impacting the other person? So for example, if you and I meet in a social setting, let's say we are meeting for coffee and you say, hi Arti, you're looking very nice today. It may be very different than if we were both going for a board meeting. You were already there and I walked into the room and in front of the entire board, you said, hi Arti, you're looking very nice today. Now, in that situation, I might feel my professional stature is undermined by making a comment about my looks, because there I'm in the capacity of a professional. So we all have to be conscious of the context, of the rapport we have. End of the day, it's about the impact. I don't think all of us are, just waiting to raise a complaint that, oh, somebody has said something, let me quickly take out a paper and start scribbling a complaint. I think what all of us are here is, how can we be comfortable and respectful to each other? And the power of the apology still is there. And when you observe that there is some discomfort, I think it's important to set things right. And we will learn. It's like table manners. We will make goof ups. We won't know which fork to use. It's okay. We will learn. But as long as we're handling it in the right way.
Very nice. Let me be a little more provocative then. For 30, 40 years, business has not been as gender aware or, as diverse. And things were okay. Companies were progressing and life was good, and, good brands were being created. What is it now? Is there a negative side to diversity? Is there or a diverse workplace? Why can't we go back to the old world of giving compliments and receiving compliments?
I think, okay, yes, it has its challenges. Having a diverse workplace has its challenges. And the important thing is, are we willing to weather those challenges, work with them, overcome them for the greater business and cultural and social good? So it's like, so having a diverse workplace. So let me give you a very small, basic entry-level challenge: washrooms. When there were no women in the workplace, washrooms was not a challenge. The men went behind the tree. Nobody spoke that the washroom stinks. So one of the very large FMCG companies, I won't take names here, but few years back, early 2000s, I was doing an assignment with them around diversity and inclusion, and I was interviewing all the women who left the organization. And one of the things they said, look, when I'm posted at the depot, or when I am traveling and, my role requires that I go to the various depots, there is no women's washroom. And it's because there are no women in the depot, there are all men. So there's no women's washroom. So the organization said, no. So there was this shanty kind of washroom that was created. And then one of the women said, the kind of soap that is there? They have kept a bar of washing soap, Rin, a tiny piece of Rin. She says, and the men don't notice the difference. The men don't care. They don't care if it's stinking. They'll just go behind the tree, right? So a very basic thing. Now, this was when women entered. Now, when we have sensitivity to other genders, now the question arises, which washroom are they going to use? If I'm a member of the LGBTQ community, which washroom do I use? Because if I go to the men's loo, the men get uncomfortable. If I go to the women's loo, they get uncomfortable. So one organization that I work with, they said, okay, let's make all washrooms unisex. And the women were up in arms. They said, we don't want to share the washroom. So as basic as that, an organization which deals with, these towers, these mobile towers, they took on this agenda of increasing the number of women in the workplace. Now, in the tower business, you can imagine what roles are there. So the majority of the roles are in servicing those towers. Now, to attract women, you have to find that talent pool, which is willing to climb a tower, fixate and come down. And the tower is usually in a remote rural location. And I'm talking about states like Orissa and Bihar and Uttarakhand. So finding that talent pool, big issue. Then the circle leader would say, I don't want women. He would like, why? And his take was, look, the tower breakdown can happen any time of the day or night. If I have a guy, he can hop onto his motorbike and quickly rush to where it is. With a girl, I have to organize a cab and I have to organize somebody to go with her because we are in Bihar. It's not safe. What do I do? So it means not only additional coordination, it also means additional expense. Do I have the budget for it? So, there are such challenges. So it takes commitment. It takes a will to do it. So there are organizations who have taken steps like saying, if you're a woman, it's okay not to take a late night flight back. take the next morning flight, because by the time you land at the airport and you reach home in a cab, it's going to be 2 a.m.
Sure.
But that means additional cost of an additional room night in a hotel.
Okay. And when companies do this and bear this additional cost and they have a commitment to this cause, that's the cost side, and it's very easily quantified. The benefits are a little fuzzy, but what are the benefits of this? Why should this towers company actually do this and go through the cost? Because the advantages, while there would be, could you help us articulate and
So
in
there is
what
a
way?
lot of, so there's a lot of research around this. There's a McKinsey report, there's a ILO report, etc., which quantifies it to say that, organizations with more than 50% women have 15% higher healthier bottom lines, or the GDPs of those nations. But to me, I think it goes beyond that. Okay? To me, it's also about being able to leverage talent. So let me take the example of this towers company itself. Why would they want to do it? I mean, they could have just said that their customer service, everybody would be female.
Sure.
Or, it also makes business sense because a lot of their customers are female. So when a landlord, so you're taking land from a landlord to put up a tower in a village, the women also have a lot of say in that, because very typically the men are migrant laborers, the women are at home. So when you have a woman going in for repair or routine, they are more welcomed into the community, right? So because you have to enter the house to be able to, so they are able to do that. And also, sometimes there's a lot of pushback from the community, local community, that this tower is causing health issues. There's a lot of, violence also. But it has been observed that, when they're dealing with a woman, they're not as aggressive. Okay. So it made business sense. Okay. And of course, the fact, and also, and look at the white collar jobs. Also, it's a fact that, when you have a more diverse workplace, not just gender-wise, it could be culturally, it could be socially, it could be educationally, the quality of conversations is different. The way you approach problem solving is different. So there is a business case for diversity. Whether that diversity is, and it's tough, because inclusion is tough. Now, it's so easy. If you and I are the same age, we have the same education, we have similar experience, we quickly converge because our thinking is so similar. So our ability to take decisions fast is there. But the moment you have a different person, now there's a different view, there's a different perspective, they will bring in a different angle. So you have to go discuss till the cows come home. But that decision stays longer. It has also taken in more perspectives. So it is also something that is possibly a better decision.
Wonderful. In fact, I must mention that there are a lot of comments coming in, and everyone is very appreciative. There is appreciation for my provocative question, and also a lot more, messages for the lucidity with which you are explaining this rather sensitive and less spoken of agenda. I also encourage all the listeners to pose any questions that you may have for Arti, which I'll try and weave into our discussion. Arti, let me come to the next question, which is again something which is a bit sensitive, but it has been in the news of late. Did not start from India, but it has now entered India also. It's this whole Me Too movement. Which is reflecting that they were, connecting with something you mentioned earlier, that it was around, but it was not coming to the surface. So what is leading to this coming to the surface, and what is behind this whole Me Too movement, and where is it heading? And if you could give some explanations when you explain about this, how companies are tackling this, what is a good way to tackle it, what is a bad way to do it, things in which you destroy value or in which you create value.
So, okay, so the Me Too movement started in the US, in Hollywood. It spread across the world. It came to India. This was 2018, October 2018, when it hit India. And, primarily it was the media world, the Bollywood, Collywood, Tollywood, you name it, and of course some very high profile journalists, etc. So there were all those cases. But actually, the reporting of it started a little before. So the Me Too movement actually was what it is called, the Me Too. It gave people confidence to say, oh yes, it's happened to me also, and I can speak about it, because so far I did not speak about it because I didn't know what is it, what will happen if I do, am I the only one? And there was guilt. There was guilt around it that, if it has happened to me in some way, I am responsible for it, or there is the stigma around it. So the Me Too movement has in some ways encouraged people to say it's okay to talk about it, because you are not the guilty one. But it has also brought in another side of it, that a lot of people have been saying, oh, all complaints are false. Why is somebody coming out 20 years later? They got all the benefits. So, branding anybody who's raising a complaint as a false complainant. But I think I will just go back a little and say, how did it happen in India? Okay? So in India, 1997 is the first time we heard about sexual harassment at the workplace. This was when something called Vishakha Guidelines was issued by Justice Verma for all employers in India, which was a result of a gang rape of a woman called Chaudhry Devi in Rajasthan, who was a Anganwadi worker who was gang raped by the community because she was trying to stop a child marriage from taking place. So it's a very interesting case. I would urge all of you to just look it up. You'll find it very easily. But Chaudhry Devi is the reason today you and I are sitting here and talking about it. Okay, so 92, she was gang raped. 97, we got Vishakha guidelines which said the employer is responsible for ensuring a safe and secure environment for all women. And it gave some principles on which an employer can do this. But these were guidelines and nobody followed them, or very few followed them. And only in cases where there was a very complex or serious or a complaint against a very senior person, they would follow this. Then these NGOs continued to build pressure on Parliament and say that please make this into a law. Never came up for discussion. The bill was introduced in 2010, never came up for discussion. 2012, Nirbhaya happened. The country woke up to the safety and security of women. And suddenly this bill was fast-tracked. And by December 2013, exactly a year after Nirbhaya, we had this act, which is applicable to all employers with more than 10 employees. Now, what this and the Me Too movement have done is, created a framework for which gives you how to handle a complaint. We created awareness, because the act also say every person must be aware of the policy and the law. So it has created more awareness that this is how it will be dealt with. Now it is seen as a civil offense. So you can go to court against it. And so all of that is, and when there are more and more cases coming forward, more people, there is more confidence. There's more confidence in the organizations also to address it, to deal with it. So it's all a good thing. And I tell all my clients that, when we do these awareness sessions, actually the last slide says that be mindful, there will be a sudden spurt in complaints. Actually, when I was doing this session for one of my clients, there was a gentleman in the participants who said, "Madam, please don't do all this." I was taken aback. I said, "What happened?" So he said, "You are teaching us all wrong things. You are teaching us things," because I was giving examples of what. So he says, "We are a good organization. Such things don't happen here." I said, "Yes, you are not aware that they happen here because nobody's raising it, because you're a nice family-oriented organization and nobody's reporting this. But it happens everywhere. And after these awareness sessions, you will possibly have some complaints. And then you will say, oh, Arti came and did this session and look what has happened. Because she came and told them what is sexual harassment, now sexual harassment has started happening." Mm-hmm. But actually, with that awareness, people will start reporting it. It happens everywhere. It is possible that with greater awareness, we will have greater reporting. We will have all kinds. We will have false complaints. We will have real complaints. We will have people who have experienced it not reporting it. We will have all of that. We will evolve. And the law also provides for a redressal if a complaint is false. So it's not just loaded in favor of any one gender. And yes, the law is currently for women only, but most organizations have their policies as gender neutral. So it's protection for all.
So could you give an example? And again, names are not important, but an example of an incident which was very well handled by the company, so that the company also was able to preserve value, and the employee also gained from it. And maybe another example where the company made a hash of the whole thing, and kind of destroyed value, and then the employee also is left wondering what's going on.
Okay, let me start with the hash.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'm starting with the hash because that's a case that is in the public domain, and I also have only the information that was available in the media. So but it's a very important case. Some of you may have heard about it and read about it. This was a couple of years back. One of the AVPs of Genpact committed suicide after he was accused of sexual harassment, and the inquiry was still going on, and he committed suicide, and the family has filed a case against the internal committee of that organization for abetment of suicide. Very, very sad situation from a human perspective, from as a member of an internal committee for various organizations. To me, it was a very, very sad situation, because when you receive a complaint, I think it's important to know that a complaint is an allegation. It's not a statement of fact.
Sure.
And a person who is accused or the respondent needs to be given the full opportunity, as per the principles of natural justice, to present their side of the story and arrive at recommendations or actions based on established facts. The policy and the law do provide for interim action. While the complaint has been submitted and the inquiry is going on, it could take a few weeks or a few months. And, in that period, you might take some actions to ensure both are comfortable. They're working in the same location, or sometimes they have a reporting relationship. So it says that, you could give leave to the complainant, you could transfer, you could move the reporting relationship. But none of those interim actions given in the Act say you can take any action on the respondent pending inquiry. It is all about making life comfortable for the complainant while the inquiry is going on. So from what I understand, in this particular case where the person committed suicide, he was stripped of his access to the organization, his access card, his email was blocked, his laptop was taken, he was prohibited from entering the organization. Now, all of these seem to make the person feel, I'm already guilty. Right? So it's penal. And imagine, it's like, while the inquiry is still going on, so when you take such steps, it's like as if this is all an eyewash, you've already decided, right? So I think we all have to be very, very careful and manage our biases really well to keep an open mind and say, it's an allegation, it's not a statement of fact. In fact, the Act itself was changed. When it first came out, the terms used were victim and harasser. The word victim assumes that something wrong has happened to you, and the term harasser assumes you've done something, which was subsequently changed to complainant and respondent. So a complainant is somebody who's raising a complaint. It may or may not be true. A respondent is somebody who's to reply to the complaint, may or may not be guilty. So I think those things are very important. Where the company handled it really well, lots and lots of cases, but I want to tell you about a very, do we have the time? Because this is an interesting case.
Sure. There are a lot of questions, but please carry on.
Okay,
and,
so this last one, and then we'll take the questions. Yeah.
Sure.
So,
and I have a lot of questions also.
Okay.
And if need be, we will extend the session by another 10, 15 minutes
Sure.
if needed. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Arti.
So here is this person. She posted on Facebook that she has been raped by so-and-so employee of so-and-so organization. Now, organizations normally have people who are tracking their social media footprint, and they pick it up immediately when they see the name of the organization. So they got to know within minutes of her posting it, and they informed the internal committee chairperson that so-and-so person has posted this. The internal committee chairperson reached out to her and said, what happened? You've posted something like this on Facebook. And she says, yeah, this person has raped me 8 times. And so this person told her, then what are you doing posting it on Facebook? Please go to the police, and whatever help you need, we will provide it, but please go to the police. And in that conversation, the chairperson introduced herself, told her about the policy, etc., and said, if you have a concern, come to us. And going on Facebook is not going to solve anything. So she said, oh, you are the internal committee, you look into sexual harassment. Okay, I will send you a complaint, you look into it. So the chairperson said, no, please don't do that. It is rape, it's a criminal offense. We are neither equipped to look into a complaint like that, nor are we, trained to even establish such findings. So please go to the police. She said, no, I will not go to the police. I will send you a complaint. And she sent us a complaint. Now we were like, what do we do? It's an allegation of rape. And in the complaint, she wrote rape. So we informed the police. We informed her local police station, said, we've come to know about this. You take it forward. And we marked her also on CC, letting her know that even if you are not going to the police, we are going to inform the police, because this is serious criminal offense. And she freaked out. She said, why did you tell the police? My husband, this, that, and the other. You have to investigate. And she started writing letters to us and saying, why are you protecting him? Why are you not investigating? We said, okay, we will investigate, but we will also keep the police in the loop. So we actually went and investigated it. As part of the findings, we established that it was a consensual relationship gone wrong. Both of them were in a relationship. And she also modified her statement to say it wasn't rape, but it was attempt to rape, etc. Based on the findings, we realized that the respondent, being in a position of influence, he was her boss, her super boss. So he, in his position, had used his position for sexual favors. She had used the policy for, because when their relationship broke up, to accuse him of sexual harassment. So the organization took the decision to terminate both of them. So both of them were terminated from the company.
Because we're talking about rape and the law on rape, but other cases of discrimination, harassment in office, which you mentioned are civil. What are the legal rights of complainants and respondents? One of the questions is around this, and also, what if one is falsely accused? How should one go about it?
So any organization with more than 10 employees, even if all male, needs to be compliant with this act, which is Prevention, Prohibition and Repressal of Sexual Harassment at the Workplace. Depending on your organization, you might have it only for women, which is what the law says, or you might have it gender agnostic, where irrespective of the gender of the complainant, you can raise a complaint. Very briefly, what does the law say? So the law says you can raise a complaint within 90 days of the incident. So if there is a series of incidents, let's say somebody's been sending you texts or calling you, hounding you for the last few months, but the last incident happened less than 90 days ago, you can raise a complaint to the internal committee of the organization. So if it has more than 10 employees, it will have an internal committee. The internal committee will constitute of a senior woman employee who would be the chairperson. It would have minimum 4 people and would have 50% female and 1 external member, somebody from outside the organization, typically somebody from an NGO or somebody who's associated with gender issues. Okay, so somebody like me. And so this is the minimum criteria. So when you raise a complaint, the complaint has to be in writing. Oral complaints, the committee doesn't act on. So it has to be in writing. It must carry the name of the respondent, the name of the complainant, and the allegations and the date. The complaint should be dated. Once the complaint has been received by the committee, they will meet with the complainant. They will understand, because usually in the complaint, all facts are not given. So they will meet with the complainant, minutes of the meeting will be taken, a written statement will be taken, more elaborate one. And then they will, within 7 days, inform the respondent that there is a complaint against them and give them a copy of the complaint. Now, this is very important because sometimes we get requests from complainants, "Ma'am, aap unko mat batana कि मैंने complaint की." That is unfair because that's as per principles of natural justice, not acceptable, because the respondent has a right to know who has raised the complaint, what are the allegations. Only then can they defend themselves. Right?
Sure.
So the respondent is given a copy of the complaint. The respondent is also given 10 days time to reply to the complaint. Now, when all of this happens, there is a process called conciliation, which is also built into the act. It says, if the complainant requests for a conciliation and says, if the person apologizes to me, gives it in writing, promises not to do it again, I don't want to take this forward. The respondent also agrees that, yes, I'm sorry, I meant it as a compliment. Arey yaar, I have known her for so many years. I just thought, Arey Arti, you're looking so nice today. I didn't mean it like that. If she was offended, I'm sorry. So the committee will document this, prepare a report and close it. No further action or no further inquiry is required because both have agreed to that. They will both sign the conciliation. Supposing one or both of them say no to the conciliation. Let's say the complainant says, no, this person says sorry all the time and keeps doing it. No more sorry. Or the respondent says, why should I say sorry? She's lying. This never happened. It can be like that. So if for whatever reason, one or both of them say no, then we proceed with the inquiry. And we can take interim action, like I said, leave to the complainant, which is fully paid leave. It is over and above your leave entitlement. It's fully paid. It's the right of the complainant, or transfer. Sometimes complainants also say, I don't want leave. Why should I go on leave? Or sometimes my work is commission driven. So if I go on leave, I miss out on the commissions. So my income gets impacted. So various reasons. So you can take other interim action and proceed with inquiry. Now, inquiry is based on evidence. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so here's an interesting question, and there are lots of questions coming in, so I'm coming back to this again. What about diversity and inclusion in the government sector? Is all the examples you're taking are from the private sector? What happens in the government sector? Is there any data on the government sector?
In fact, in the government sector, it is the ratios are better. Ratios are better in some industries, but by and large, it would be very similar. The class ceiling exists everywhere. The sexual harassment exists everywhere. Discrimination on a personal level exists everywhere. Numbers can be healthier in the government sector because there some of the policies are more amenable to women working, like 2-year leave, after childbirth and things like that, and the job security, etc. But working conditions wise, I think it's pretty similar.
It's pretty similar.
Human beings, no, we're all the same. We're from the same society.
Okay, so the next question is interesting one. You gave that earlier example of washrooms where there were men's and women's washrooms and nothing for the LGBTQ community. But what is the ideal solution? Are you, from your experience, what have you seen really working well?
See, ideal solutions don't exist.
Okay.
Why I'm saying that is, this is not a structural or a policy issue. This is a cultural issue. So what might work in a certain organization's culture may not work in another. So for example, if I'm in a let's say a media company, an ad organization, which is smaller, like number of people is 50 to 70, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of engagement among people, maybe the solution would be a gender neutral washroom. But if I'm in a manufacturing company, maybe that will not be the case. Right? So it is about the culture of an organization. It is about what are the other policies that intersect with it. So, for example, if it's an organization which is very, very siloed, it says, okay, there is a work from home policy, but only for women. There is a flexi working policy, only for women. There is a restroom and a place to rest and relax in the office, only for women. Then you're driving further wedges. Okay? So then that culture may not be amenable to this kind of inclusion. And I want to talk about Women's Day here. Okay, so like a lot of organizations, Women's Day has become the in thing. Last few years, lots of celebrations. I get a lot of calls. Can you come and do this? We are having this initiative for Women's Day and all. I've actually started saying no to that in the last few years because I see a lot of women coming forward and saying, we don't want this. Treat us right, treat us equal, treat us like professionals. Don't say, here is a rose, here is a box of chocolates for you on Women's Day. Don't do that for us. So it depends on the culture of the organization. So there's no ideal solution. Yeah.
Very true. Okay, here's another interesting question. What concrete actions are being taken to sensitize men? And I'm sure this comes from a woman. Is there a study which shows that money spent on education helps prevent some of these kind of issues coming up? Or is it both ways, not only educating men, but also women?
Yes, in fact, thanks for saying that, Vimal, that last comment, that it's not just about men, but women. I actually, that resonates with my own beliefs. This sensitivity, this inclusion is both ways. It's about not only men being sensitive, that now it is not an all-male domain, but it's also about women being sensitive to the fact that men are not used to it, and encouraging them, educating the men around us, not only our colleagues, but our sons, our husbands, our fathers, our brothers.
Yeah.
So, when I feel guilty about letting my husband do the dishes, I'm actually propagating the siloed structure as well. But it's also, so yes, there are initiatives. There are initiatives at the education level. I see a lot of colleges now having courses around gender sensitivity. Organizations are doing a lot of it, not only the courses on sexual harassment, which are mandated by law, but a lot of organizations are looking at inclusion and diversity as something that they want to push. And I'm getting requests about this from the most, unheard of corners. So, you would expect an American multinational wanting to do it, a European multinational wanting, but I'm getting requests to do work around this with the people from automobile sector in India, hardcore family-owned automobile sector in India. And so, it's a very interesting thing that I think as more of our daughters are getting out there in the workplace, that's helping. And as more and more of the women are getting more articulate and vocal about it, it's helping. But education and sensitivity has to be on both sides. I firmly believe. Yeah.
Yes. So here's a very interesting question which come from, I'm sure, a CEO or a leader of a business. It says, what are the fundamentals for leaders to become better leaders in terms, I mean, we're talking about the negative consequences, but on the positive side, if we do everything right, how can we be not only, inclusiveness or diversity, but and make a better, safer workplace, egalitarian workplace? How to leverage this to be better leaders? What more can be done?
I think
what would you expect from CEOs, for example?
Yeah. So I think the two biggest takeaways from having an inclusive and diverse workplace is the employer brand, your ability to attract better talent, your ability to retain talent, your ability to get more, have people give off their best, because when they are in an environment where they can be themselves, where they can be in a judgment-free environment, each one of us is able to give off our best. We are able to stretch, we are able to commit to it. If I have to constantly be on my guard as to what I say, what I do, should I speak up, should I not speak up, will I be heard, my ideas are not heard, then I start holding back in every form. But when it's an environment which encourages me to be myself, then overall the performance of the organization is enhanced. People stay longer, people talk better of the organization. Glassdoor has more positive comments, your employer brand goes up, and everybody wants to be part of you. So you become the kind of employer where the best talent wants to be. So as a leader, if you can encourage that.
Very interesting. So we have only 5 minutes left, but I'm taking the liberty of extending till as much time as we need to wrap up with all the questions which are coming. Thanks, Arti, for being flexible with that. Another very interesting question from the same person is there anything at the recruitment time, interview stage, that we can do to find out whether this person is going to support and uphold the principles of diversity, inclusiveness, or how do you do that so that you're even absorbing talent which is more aligned to this kind of a value? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are two things here. So I will talk, when you've spoken about recruitment, though the question is about how do I assess a person's approach towards diversity and inclusion, but I'll take the liberty of addressing another aspect of recruitment as well. So one is how do you assess a person's approach? So I would say when you are coaching people on the kind of questions to ask during interviews, do include in your interview question bank scenarios where a person is asked about how they will include people. So in your question bank, you must have scenarios to do with diversity, not just gender. You could also have approach towards people with disabilities, caste, religion, social setting, somebody who comes from a very economically challenged background. So your interview bank must include some of those things. Of course, some organizations use psychometrics, etc., also as assessments for new recruits. You could ensure the tool that you are using is also checking around this. But if when you are recruiting, in order to encourage greater, diversity and lesser bias at the time of recruiting, one thing that has worked which a lot of organizations are doing, is blind resumes. So they remove the name of the person, so you can't even make out the gender from the name. Anything that will tell you something about the person's, any bias that can creep into the screening panel. Because a lot of times it's seen, you look at it and you say, "Arey yaar, bandi hai, chhod do. Is role ke liye nahi," you know. So you kind of evaluate a profile based on their resume. That's one. Secondly, writing very, very specific job descriptions. You know, when your job descriptions are fuzzy, you are unable to make decisions around the best talent. So actually your job description saying what are the competencies required, what are the conditions in which a person will be working, so that at the time of interview, you can share that with the person. So if a job requires travel for 20 days a month, the candidate can take an informed decision, you know, to say, and you are not assuming on their behalf, because in your head, you know this job requires 20 days. You never check that with the person. And you said 20 days hai, 2 saal ka beta hai, nahi karega. Right? So
the question is, how do you manage unconscious bias? And we don't even realize at times we are being biased.
Because it's unconscious.
Yes.
Yes. I think one of the things is calling out the elephant in the room. It's important for us to be aware that we all suffer from unconscious bias. When we call it out, then perhaps we will become more mindful of it. And I will urge each one of you, if you've not already seen it, watch it, a movie called Ek Ruka Hua Faisla. If you have seen it, please watch it again from the perspective of unconscious bias. So, Ek Ruka Hua Faisla, there is an English version also called 12 Angry Men. My vote goes for Ek Ruka Hua Faisla. It's the Indian version of it, the Hindi version, because it calls out the biases that we are more familiar with. So, and it's a brilliantly made NSD film, old film. So maybe our generation is not so jarred by it, but even the young will enjoy it. Do watch it. It will bring out, so, you know, biases like I mean, my generation suffers from is that people who speak English are more competent. So the better your English, the more competent you are. And I think all of us have been, at many occasions, been proved wrong around that. So calling out the elephant in the room is very, very critical.
Very interesting. Next question, again, which is something that you mentioned in the very beginning. COVID-19 impact and work from home, and how is this to be seen in context of diversity, inclusiveness, harassment? Is it only workplace? Ghar pe kya hoga? You know?
Well, you can tell me that, Vimal, ghar pe hoti hai harassment.
That's a different kind.
That's a different section. Okay, so actually this COVID-19 situation has been fabulous from a diversity point of view. Reason is that prior to this, when we were doing these diversity and inclusion initiatives, one of the big asks used to be flexi time and work from home. And everybody used to think it's the women who want it. And, because they don't want to work, it's basically paid holiday that they want. And when women opt for work from home, they're actually not working. The constant refrain was, how do you track it? How do I know somebody's working? They log in and they keep doing their household work. Kitty party mein jati hongi. I heard this refrain very often. So from that point of view, I think this COVID-19 has just killed that conversation forever. I think we've all realized that work from home is tougher, not easier than working in the office. We've realized that work does get done, and sometimes even more work than used to be done when we were in the office. The boundaries of the workplace and the home are so blurred that it requires a whole level of juggling. So from that point of view, it has been great. I think going forward, we will all be more sensitive of people's personal needs. We will also be sensitive that work from home is not just something women want. A lot of men prefer flexi working. They have responsibilities, aging parents, small children, hobbies they want to pursue, education they want to pursue. So good news. Work from home has been good news. This first 4 months, fantastic. Coming to the definition of workplace and sexual harassment, it hasn't stopped. It has changed form. So sexual harassment is not physical contact so much, but texts, sharing obscene videos. We've all seen those WhatsApp forwards where somebody's in their underpants and, by mistake, the camera is on. So those things have been happening. People commenting about what somebody's wearing on a video call, insisting on a video call at an inappropriate time. So all that continues. So I'm still busy investigating cases.
Interesting. Another very pointed question. How do you decipher if someone is in a sexual harassment case is lying? Is it purely just investigative and trying to bring it out, or is there something else to it? Could you give an example?
Yeah, so the committee is like a civil court. It has the powers, the limited powers of a civil court. So it's not about us intuitively deciding whether somebody is lying or not. It has to be based on evidence. It has to be based on facts. So a statement is only a statement till it can be corroborated with facts. So witness statements, etc. But the good news here is that we don't have to establish beyond reasonable doubt. We have to establish the probability of something occurring. So sometimes it's he said, she said. Two people alone in a room, one person accuses the other, there is no witnesses, no CCTV, nothing. Tough, very, very tough. But what it leads to is that as a committee, we will dig for corroboration from other facts, which can lead us to believe the probability of something like this occurring. So for example, we received a complaint from a lady about something that happened in a lift. Nobody else in the lift, no CCTV camera. Now, how do you say? She said he tried to kiss me. He says I did. So, but the circumstantial evidence around it, the guard outside the lift confirming she didn't want to go in. The guy insisted that she go into the lift. The lift reached the ground floor. She came running up from the stairs, immediately went to HR and informed them. The little skirmishes that they were having before the lift incident. So corroborative circumstantial evidence can also help us probability of something having. But yes, there are some cases where we don't have anything.
There's another question which comes, and this is on the Me Too movement that you mentioned. Of course, it seems to have come from a gentleman, and he's asking, why is the Me Too movement only for women? Why not men?
Men can raise it too. Unfortunately, the law in India currently is about sexual harassment of women at the workplace. But it's not that men can't raise it. It is based on their allegation, based on the action that they are reporting. The relevant act will apply. So you can report it, you can go to the police. Based on the specific action that you are reporting, they will select the IPC under which it will be reported. Not this section, but some other. Yeah.
And possibly an add-on question. How about Indian law and the legal framework today for inclusion? Is it fairly balanced in your opinion, or are we still evolving? Where are we today?
We're still evolving.
Inclusion. Okay.
Yeah, we're still evolving. Discrimination anyway is covered. Any form of discrimination on gender, we do have laws around it. Again, going by the specific action a person is reporting. Sexual harassment today is for women, but in January 2019, a notification came where members of the LGBTQ community could also report it in the police. I'm very hopeful that in the next round of amendments, we might get a gender-neutral amendment to this act as well. But organizations, a lot of organizations that I know have their policies as gender-neutral. So within your organization, you can report it mostly.
Okay. So here's an interesting question. Comes from a CEO of a large company. A conformity bias seems to be driving a lot of hiring around sales function. Okay, we have this bias that, okay, a good successful salesman is like this. How to break sometimes these shackles around biases which come into some specific roles? Okay, agar salesman hai to is tarah ka chahiye.
So I think the first step would be recognizing that it's a bias. And how do you do that? You do that through data. So you do that through examples of people who have been successful in similar roles, where you try to do something different and somebody succeeded at it. So challenge, it's like trying out a new dish. If I go to the same restaurant every time, order the same food every time, I'm possibly missing out on something really fantastic. So I will have to be conscious that there are other dishes and possibly better, and force myself to taste it. So sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't. But in the process, I will at least discover what works and what doesn't. So once you recognize that it's a bias, because bias on its own tells you that it is not data-driven. Okay, so if you have recognized that it's a bias, give yourself that opportunity, experiment. What is the worst that will happen? What is the worst? And we have lots of success stories around this. So go ahead, experiment. Try newer people. I know, like for example, Enfield, the motorbike, they have been hiring people from NIFT for design. And these are fashion designers for design of the fuel
motorcycle.
tank.
Okay.
Yeah, motorcycle fuel tank. So, think different.
Very interesting. The next question is an interesting, thought-provoking one. And this says, keeping in view the improvement in ratio of women employees since 1990s, are we inching toward amendment of the Factories Act, where we are seeing right now very clear guidelines? Okay, permissible work hours for women are like this, and there are some specific rules there.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of states have also amended it already. So like when I was working in a factory in the 1990s, the night shift was not permissible for women. But a lot of states have already amended that. They're also more open to organizations asking for special permission. So for example, Mahle has 60% women in their factories, again, automobile components. And there they work on shifts. So, but of
Okay.
course, there is a lot of riders to it in terms of providing transport, accommodation, all of that. But it's happening. It's happening already. And I think that's only a matter of time. Not only inching, I think we're walking well in that direction.
Okay. Arti, this has been really wonderful. I see a lot of comments congratulating you on the lucidity with which you have explained everything. Thank you very much. Really appreciate this. I see a lot of observations of people who are saying, you know, of the different contexts, and most of them are in agreement with you in the way things are evolving and appreciating. And I think the whole idea of this session and also putting it online was that we can all be better at whatever we desire to be. And we have to recognize the way the world is changing. So really, thank you so much, Arti. Really appreciate this. To all the viewers today, thank you so much for joining us online. Of course, give me about 48 hours and this video will also be available online, and you'll get a link to this. Arti, really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Very much.
Have a
My
good
pleasure.
weekend,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.